What's up, closers? This is Kevin.
This is Ryan.
This is Becca, and you're listening to the Close of Business podcast,
The one and only STEM podcast for young professionals.
When the company laptops close,
the beer's open,
and the conversation flows.
all of this and more happens
at the Close of Business.
All right. When Ryan is done clucking, I will get warming up. I will
Mother clucker.
little clucker over here. All right, welcome back, everybody, to episode 36 of the Close of Business podcast. Today's episode will cover decade in review, and I have to say, I have to give a shout out. I was feeling pretty bad this morning. I was tired, didn't get any sleep, was staying up researching this, and then I had this song that was stuck in my head for 2 months. And I sang it to Becca, and I got every single lyric wrong, but she knew exactly what song I was singing.
Shazam.
She is
Shazam. Only for EDM songs though.
But I mean, I've gotten songs stuck in my head for a day, a week, but this has been 2 months. I've been trying to find the song, and she knew instantly, and I'm in an exponentially better mood.
For reference, it's
Petite Biscuit.
Yeah, Petite Biscuit.
How does he pronounce it?
Petite Biscuit.
He's French. He's from the land of France. But anyways, what's problems? Yeah, I've been singing the song. I've been singing every lyric wrong, which is why Shazam didn't recognize it. Not because my voice is terrible. But anyways.
Oh, that's an opinion, but.
Today, as I mentioned, is going to be Decade in Review. Essentially, we're going to start off with a podium of the failed STEM predictions at the beginning of the decade. And then we're going to go through the decade and kind of outline what we've grouped as three major sectors is transportation, consumer tech, and medical. And we're going to just kind of go through the big innovations of the decade. And lastly, we're going to cap off the episode with giving our own predictions of 2020 to see how ridiculous those sound in 10 years.
I think the first thing we need to address is, what do we call the 2020 decade? Do we call it the 20s? I feel like
we have to.
You know what I mean?
The 20s, though, sounds like 1920s. Like
you know,
when I hear
exactly.
20s.
Which is like the roaring 20s were lit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like it was never an issue with the 10s because like what was in the 1910s? Yeah. Like World War I, and that was it.
That was it. Damn.
But maybe that's what we need to accomplish today, is coining what we believe the 2020 decade is going to be nicknamed.
All right. Throughout the episode, let's internally think of that, and then we'll give our names at the end of the episode, and we'll see who's is the best. Let's move into the podium. It's a pretty dense episode, so let's just get right into it.
For those of you who don't know what a podium is, if you're joining us for the first time in this year,
welcome.
We pick a topic and then we pick our bronze, silver, and gold, similar to an Olympic podium, for that particular topic. So like Kevin said today, failed STEM predictions of the 2010s, what was supposed to happen by 2020 and hasn't yet. And it's kind of funny that it hasn't. I'll go first.
Yeah. Starting
with my bronze. This is, of course, an Elon Musk prediction. I wouldn't like to start off the episode any other way. He believed that by 2020, AI and robots were going to be taking over most of human beings' jobs. That hasn't happened yet. Also, there were predictions stating that robots were going to have almost full-fledged emotions. Mm-hmm. They could emote and understand emotion similarly to how humans can now. That also hasn't happened yet.
I don't think humans can understand emotions.
That's true. If humans can't understand emotions, then how are we supposed to program robots?
Okay, maybe cut that
one. No, we got to leave that in.
Well, at least the females understand emotions. But,
yeah. That's true. Yeah.
I'm not profiling.
I don't feel emotions.
I'm cold.
So that's my bronze.
I'm a witcher.
Ryan, what about you?
I'm gonna go with my bronze is QR codes. So do you guys remember there was like a point everyone thought QR codes were like gonna take over, and this is kind of like a fail.
We as a podcast thought QR codes were.
And that's the thing. On our first business card was a QR code and like supposed to take us to our website. I think I handed all of them out, and everyone would like, I guarantee we got 0 scans of QR codes.
I still don't understand why are QR codes better than barcodes? I don't understand. Are they supposed to be like safer?
I don't get it either.
I don't know, but like
that's actually a very good point.
Like they said only 6.2% used them the year that they were
I don't
deployed.
think I've ever scanned a QR code.
So dumb question. Do you have to have like an app to scan a QR code?
So that was the point. It was the point, like every iPhone was supposed to be built in with a QR scanner, and so but they just never developed it. Like it was an app, at first. There was an app to scan it, but like it was supposed to be mainstream where you would just take a picture of a QR code and it takes you to a website or whatever.
Yeah.
But like,
Somebody was like, let's rebrand, let's make it more square, and let's just revamp this whole system. It'll make us some money.
so that's my bronze.
My bronze. So I don't know if like your predictions are recent predictions, but I saw this like pretty ridiculous prediction from the 60s where it's a Rand corporation predicted that we would have by 2020, and which is why I'm using this prediction, we would have bred animals to carry out our daily chores. Like
I saw that on the internet and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I saw it on the internet too. Crazy. And then I'm actually kind of pissed because I feel like this is a doable task. This is an extremely doable task.
I'm sorry, but like, okay, if humans were enslaved at some point, it's gonna turn into a whole other like rights movement where it's like animals deserve the same type of freedoms that humans do.
I don't approve, but it's doable.
What would be your first task you'd want to teach said animal?
Said animal. Well, I think like, first of all, that said animal, the low-hanging fruit would be like a chimpanzee. We need opposable thumbs to do what I want them to do, which, okay.
And we'll end it right there. Leave it up to your imagination.
No, I can't end it right there.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I did.
Cook my breakfast, I think, is like the biggest, and that's a stupid, boring task, but you put me on the spot. Cooking breakfast is like, is a task I don't have time for every day. So, yeah.
I don't eat breakfast. I would say go to the grocery store and get my groceries for me. I don't trust delivery service. They give me produce.
Are you saying a chimpanzee would be better than a human delivery service?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And on that note,
Silver. Wait, no, it's my turn.
Snake draft.
Silver. The second I saw was called Active Skin, which is essentially a concept, and this was a recent prediction. It was like in 2008, 2009. They said by 2020 we would have microchips or like some type of skin or outer layer that would help us feel things like the warmth of a hug or like...
Oh, so like a patch you'd put on your skin
that
makes
you can like measure emotion.
Like you could like
quantify all qualitative stuff.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Oh, Ryan coming in with the vocab.
Yeah, wow. What's your silver?
My silver, there was a big prediction, and this like started in 2010 with the whole Google Glass movement, but was like everyone's going to be walking around with like glasses, and like the glasses like
augmented reality
AR. Through your glasses.
Yeah.
And that lived a whole couple months, and then
it died out so quick.
Yeah, and then it fell off.
I love the idea of that because I'd be like, oh, I'm a spy all the time.
Right.
I guess when smartwatches first came out, I was like, we are all James Bond.
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess
except there's no laser beams. I can't like just shoot a laser beam at someone from my watch.
Yeah, like just like cut through metal with your watch. Oh no. It's dead or it's locked shut with a chain. I'll take care of that, and then you bust out your smartwatch or your Google glasses.
Whenever, because that's something I need on the daily.
Lasers.
You can email Google.
So my silver is private citizens going to the moon.
Yeah.
Which honestly, really, we're not that far away from right now. I think that one was held up more from like an economic type hurdle. Because I think that we definitely have the technology and capability to do that. And we have enough crazy private citizens who are like, sure, sign me up.
Right.
Not me.
I signed up.
Yeah, I know you did. You're crazy. All right. So for my gold is flying Ubers. So Uber promised to have flying vehicles.
That's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, like planes or helicopters. We're not talking hovercraft. We're talking like... Uber was going to have helicopters and private planes and stuff that you could just on your app book. And they said that was going to be completed by 2020. Hasn't happened yet, but that would be dope.
Well,
I'm thinking like if that ever happens, that is a major change to the airline market.
Yeah.
Honestly.
100%. Although I do I'm not trying to like throw you under the bus, but I've kept my ear to the ground when it comes to memes. And I remember seeing right around the holiday, New Year's, there was a meme, not a meme, but like a photo going around of some girl who screenshot. It was cheaper to fly Uber helicopter. And I think it was New Year's Eve, Uber helicopter than to take an Uber X. So I think it existed right at 2020.
Of course it did. Of course it did. Well, let's say widely commercially available.
Yeah, widely commercially. Okay.
All right, Ryan, what's your goal?
Gold, and this is a real big fail on the part of the Mayans. Do you guys remember the world was supposed to end by the end of 2012?
Yeah.
I was freaking out when that day was coming up.
We're all here. That was a failed prediction.
I do have to say that led to one epic party in college.
I remember I was at my parents' house home for winter break after my first semester of college, and I was panicking.
Yeah.
How many bad choices were made that night?
I'm not stitious. I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious.
A little stitious.
God, yeah.
I've got like a theory about 2012 in general.
Yeah.
We'll get to that when we get to the next part of the episode. But yeah. My goal is, I don't know if you guys remember Aaron. He was a podcast host from back in the day.
And Killshot.
One of his weird
Papa
things,
Aaron.
I don't know if we ever talked about it on air, but he hated the fact that we had to eat food. And he said, I'd much rather just like eat a cube that would give me the exact amount of nutrients that I need for the day, or like take a pill.
Yeah.
So one of the predictions was that food consumption wouldn't be a thing anymore, and that there would be these nanobots that we could ingest that would live in our gut that could analyze and tell us exactly the amount of food that we need to survive, and that they would dispose of. I'm assuming that just means poop. Get rid of all the rest, which would transition us not eating as much food because like it's a waste, and the whole thing is we need to eat less as a society. But I just like in 10 years, this guy expected the culture to shift. I mean, especially in America, like food is an experience.
Food is my joy.
Yeah.
That's what my weekends are centered around.
I think that was just a ridiculous take. That
I live to eat. I don't need to live.
Who would be the first?
Amen to that.
Comment on that though. What was the Disney Channel show that like it was like a spray can? Was it like Even Stevens, and they like spray it and then like a steak would appear?
Milo.
I think that
was
even,
that Xenon? No.
I don't know
It
what
might
that
have been
was.
Xenon.
No, it seems too cheesy. Well, it's
DM us on Instagram or Twitter and let us know what Disney movie that is, because that's
exactly
going to
what
drive
you're
me
talking about.
nuts.
Yeah, it was like they had all these different spray cans and it was like a meal and they just like sprayed on a plate.
I feel like it might have been Xenon. I don't know.
It's either that or Smart House.
I'm waiting for that to develop.
I got Disney Plus. I'll do some research.
Aerosols are bad for the environment, though.
That's
anyway,
true.
I'm foiling everybody's plans.
All right, so let's get into the decade in review part of this episode. And as I mentioned before, we kind of split into 3 categories: transportation, consumer tech, which has a ton of subcategories, and medical. And we originally had like 6 or 7 categories.
So hard to pare it down.
All right, so the first one's transportation, and I created some subcategories here. Automobiles, scooters, Hyperloop, Boring Company, jets, and space.
Boring company.
The Boring Company. So I'll start off with automobiles first and just kind of talk about the developments. So each one of these categories, we're going to kind of give a developments, timeline, big events, news, any big fails, and then what we think to be one of the biggest developments of the decade in this area. So we'll have a little debate at the end of each category. So with automobiles, I think the coolest and let's just say the biggest would be the oncoming of electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles.
Yeah.
Electric vehicles.
Did we mention that kind of is a fail? Like it's taking longer than I think originally thought.
Yeah, it is taking a lot longer, and
it's just a lot more complex. Sorry,
it is.
I don't want to derail you.
And it all comes down to the efficiency of batteries, which, the technology increases exponentially, which, we're doing a lot on the battery front, but still we can't get the footprint that would fit into a car. Mm-hmm. So in the year 2010, there were probably less than 10,000 vehicles. The scale of the graph that I saw, the first notch was 100,000, and you could barely see the mark on 2010 or 11. I think it was 2011.
And that doesn't include like hybrids at all. That's straight up.
Straight up EV.
Okay.
And then in 2019, there are now 1.2 million electric vehicles on the road.
Worldwide or in the United States?
I think this might have been in the United States.
Okay.
And that's a huge increase percentage-wise, but it's still only 1.8% of the entire market share of vehicles on the road in the U.S. Don't come at me if that's worldwide. So along with this, there are now 57,000 charging outlets and 20,000 charging stations. A big player in this is obviously Tesla and Elon Musk. We couldn't get through this decade in review without mentioning his name.
Clearly, I already did.
A ton of times. So big news, Tesla came out with the Model S, their first concept like clean vehicle that they came out with in 2012 and produced in 2013. It won Motor Trend Car of the Year in 2013, and they have since released crossovers and then most recently a cyber truck, which could be included as a fail, although it was sneakily a huge success because Tesla stock went from the lowest valued automobile company in 2010 to the highest valued automotive company in 2020. So huge.
Marketing scheme. Anyway.
Big. Last thing I want to talk about the technology that we see in cars today as compared back to the beginning of the decade. In 2010, we had most standard features like, power steering, power windows and all that. It's not the 90s, but we were just getting introduced to USB outlets in the cars for our phones. That's because the iPhone had just recently became a thing. Nowadays, cars are just jam-packed with technology, a lot having to do with the digitalization of our society, and cars are keeping up with that. So you've got things like Wi-Fi hotspots in cars. You have cars that are enabled with Apple CarPlay or can hook up and are compatible with your phone devices. You have levels of autonomy that have come around with the development of LiDAR, which is light detecting radar. And these levels of autonomy we discussed on an earlier episode, so go check that out. I think it's below episode 10. And these levels of autonomy, we went from pretty much level 1 to where there was hardly any autonomy in 2010 to where most cars are equipped with level 2 autonomy, which is things like lane keep assist. If you're on cruise control, your car can sense and someone cuts you off, it'll automatically stop. Emergency braking systems. Some cars have level 3 where you can be present at the wheel and awake and they'll drive you from point A to point B. You have the rear view camera, you have 360 cameras, you have parallel parking assisting on some cars. And then you even have cars like Waymo, who you don't even need a passenger in the car. And this is level 4 autonomy. So Tesla's like level 3, you have to be present and it can drive you from point A to point B. Level 4 autonomy is no person in the car, but they're driving on a set track. So a Google spinoff company called Waymo is actually, over the last decade, creating this fleet of delivery vehicles or cars that can run on specific tracks. Like you can't just free drive let's just say there was a level 5 autonomous car that would just go to wherever you were. If someone needed to be picked up here, it could go there, it could go there, it could go off-road. It can just drive wherever the heck it wants. We've gotten to level 4 with Waymo.
Also, Tesla's new software update where you can press a button and if you parked your Tesla like in a parking lot, you go in to get groceries.
So that would be,
you can press a button and your Tesla without anybody in the car will come up and pick you up.
Yeah. So level 4 right there. So we're talking from before we had USB chargers to cars coming to pick us up.
I just want to say, if I was a little kid right now going on road trips, it would be fun. Think about what it was like when we were little kids and we had to do road trips. It was a nightmare.
Yeah.
We'd listen to, like cassette tapes.
Disagree. I had a Game Boy Color.
Okay.
My dad, he would be driving, and on the middle console we had like a little 8-inch tube TV. And he would put the TV on there and rest his arm, and we'd play VCRs, and everyone in the back would watch it.
Or I would bring like my PlayStation.
Yeah,
and
that was the big step up when we had screens in my parents' minivan, and then also just like a power cord connection so that we could bring in our PlayStation and play Need for Speed for like 6 hours straight in the car.
Oh man, the memories are flooding. So that was just automobiles. I'm going to fly through the rest. The other big thing kind of pertaining to automobiles is the idea of Uber and Lyft, which I think is, huge when it comes to disrupting the taxi market. It's even bigger in that it brought on the ride sharing idea, the fact that we don't necessarily need to own a car to get from point A to point B, that you don't need to own that asset. You can share it with other people. One really cool statistic about that I saw, a study conducted in NYC, that drunk driving incidents decreased 25 to 30%.
I'm sure.
Since the onset of Uber, which I think is probably like the biggest and the coolest thing that Uber and Lyft have done.
So far, yeah, absolutely.
So far. And Even though Uber was conceptualized in 2008, they picked up their first passenger July of 2010.
Yeah, Uber X became rolled out in 2010 because it used to be like a super nice luxury service, I think initially, and then it became a widely spread commercial service when Uber X was rolled out in 2010, and Lyft was developed in 2010 as well. So
following that ride sharing app, everybody knows Bird scooters, Lime bike, Lime scooters.
There's 8,000 types of it now. I live in the Crossroads in Kansas City, and I was taking my dog for a walk yesterday morning, and I walked by 3 new scooters of a completely different brand.
Yeah.
Like they're just continuing to proliferate. It's crazy.
It's like nostalgia of like the Razor scooter as a kid.
Yeah.
I feel like riding it. Like that's what's so great about it.
Another great segue. Thank you, Ryan. So like those the last couple ideas have been existing concepts just transformed. Another big part of 2010 is the conceptualization of new ideas. Wow, big word for this morning. So the Hyperloop, first brought to public forum in 2012. Remember that date?
Yeah. By
Elon Musk. Also, Tesla Model S 2012. There's something going on here, guys.
Big year.
So for those of you who don't know, the Hyperloop, it's a vacuum sealed high-speed rail, essentially. Go look up the episode. We did an entire episode on the technology of it. I just want to give a quick update. It was conceptualized in 2012. Since then, Virgin Hyperloop 1 was created, and they are in the process of finding cities or states or governments to create a test track to officially build the first functioning Hyperloop system. Here in the Midwest between St. Louis and Kansas City, we conducted a feasibility study, and the next step is we're looking to build a test track that should cost anywhere between $300 to $500 million. And they're estimating the cost to build a track between St. Louis and Kansas City would be around $10.4 billion total. So it's a huge investment.
I'm going to take the over on that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Although it's hard to go over 10.4 billion IMO. Next thing, Elon Musk, the Boring Company. He founded this in December 2017, and this is just a new way to rethink our infrastructure for cars or Hyperloop, and it's just essentially a tunneling company that's trying to decrease the cost of tunneling so that we can circumvent traffic in busy cities and just create more levels of infrastructure. Next, we have the jet-powered flyboards or flying hoverboards that we've been seeing in 2019 in August. For the first time, somebody flew a jet-powered board across the English Channel, which was like 20 miles or so.
What? I did not know that.
Yeah, it was big. And if you're on internet, on the Twitter sphere or Reddit, you can see videos of like navies. France did a huge parade or ceremony where they had a guy on a jetpack and some type of hovercraft. And so I really think we're going to see the onset of these personal flying vehicles a lot.
Just side note, what's the point of a hoverboard over water? Like, what is the point of that?
I mean, I've flown on one for fun, but I'm never going to go, hey, let's go to Hawaii and just like be by myself over
for
water.
20 hours.
For 20 hours over water. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I feel like the whole point of hoverboards is that, honestly, I don't know the point. I honestly
right,
don't.
Becca, not a fan.
Cool technology, but why?
And then lastly, SpaceX, and this idea of space tourism was not conceptualized. People probably thought of it earlier than 2010, but it really developed in the last decade. SpaceX successfully flown 19 missions with their Dragon capsule and Falcon 9 rocket, the first of which came on October 2012. Weird. The big idea and the big developments with SpaceX, there's other companies like Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. One of the biggest concepts that's making this space tourism concept realized is being able to reuse rockets instead of just sending it out to space or getting destroyed and blowing up or whatever. Is they're able to successfully land and reuse these, which will significantly decrease the cost, but it's still $62 million to fly it.
Yeah, but also increase the frequency too of how often you're able to go.
And they even said I was looking up like predictions for 2030 and beyond, and they're like space clutter, space trash is like going to be a big problem because there's so many satomites that are out there or whatever. Well, they're saying from like a logistical standpoint, not from like polluting.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But you get to get rid of that if you have a reusable rocket.
And then last piece of news, Virgin Galactic, they flew a successful test flight in suborbital space in 2018. I think they might be the closest to the whole commercial flying. Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, his company's more scientific, like you can rent a spot on these to go into space and conduct experiments. Elon Musk is flying back and forth to the International Space Station and trying to get to Mars, whereas Virgin Galactic, I think, is really the space tourism.
So for every single section we're doing the kind of like our opinions on what the decade's biggest, who the winners were and what the failures were. So I guess I can kind of start off. My winner, obviously, I'm going to say Uber and Lyft. Like, I know personally they have changed my life. Like, literally, they've changed how I operate in my life. So I'm just going to say, for me, they're the biggest winner.
I think like the biggest impact to my life, and I think to the life of almost everyone listening to this in 2010s, is ride sharing apps.
Yeah, for sure.
I think 2020 might be a different story. Hopefully the Hyperloop.
Okay, mine's a little bit of a curveball because I want to say it dips into a little bit of 2010, but I'm just gonna say the proliferation and like ease of use of GPS. Like, remember when you go to a friend's house, like, and you'd have to do MapQuest and like you skip a turn, like, oh, I'm lost, I gotta go home.
Well, even now, I think about how easy traveling internationally is for me.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
That's crazy.
Like, how you don't, like, when I traveled internationally, I didn't have to be on the internet.
No, that's
to use
huge.
some apps.
You get on the internet, type in your destination, and then you can get off the internet.
Right, and it still knows where you're at.
And it knows where you're at.
So it's kind of it started. I mean, if you look it up, it was like in mid 2000s that it started to be used, like Google Maps and stuff. But like,
that's so true.
The expansion of it in the 2010s.
What happened to MapQuest? That's a big question.
Yeah, I don't know. R.I.P.
All right, so Kevin, what's your biggest fail of the decade for transportation?
I'm glad you asked, Becca. My biggest fail would be the Takata airbag recall. So essentially, there's this airbag, which is like not a recent technology, a pretty easy technology in my opinion, but I don't know much about airbags, that would shoot, when it went off, would shoot fiery shrapnel, not at people, quote, into people.
What?
I'm not laughing, but.
So not only did you get in an accident, but you're getting hit by a Claymore mine. That would be my biggest fail.
That's a pretty big fail. That's a pretty big one.
Yeah.
I'm going to die on this sword because I've already said it, but the Cybertruck throwing the rock at it. I'm going to say that was a fail. It was just a recent memory, just an iconic
recency bias. Yeah.
My thing is, like, was it really worth all of the show? Because in reality, how many people are like, you know what I really want in a vehicle? For it to be bulletproof. And it never, I mean, how often do windshields shatter? Like, not that often, probably once or twice in a person's lifetime, maybe, you know what I mean? So after all of that, it really wasn't worth it, in my opinion. I have two fails. One, I'm just going to say it, the hoverboard. Don't get it. I just don't. I do not get it. I do not get it. I would see when I was at University of Kansas and I'd be walking around campus and I saw the KU basketball team players, instead of walking, they're on their freaking hoverboards.
Stop trying to get them in trouble.
Oh, not the jetpack hovercraft.
No,
the hoverboard
wheels.
Little, like the 2-wheel hoverboards. Man, those things annoy me.
And they would blow up on people too.
Yeah. No, they literally like lit on fire.
Yeah.
Second one, I'm just going to say massive fail. Legs. Legs have not evolved over the past 10 years. We haven't gotten any better in our own personal transportation
Hint
systems.
to future content, prosthetic legs have, but human legs, yes.
I thought it was funny. Nope. Okay.
That was good.
Just like you're on one, like you're
Just
treat your legs nicely. Maybe if you don't skip
today.
leg day every freaking week, you know, legs would get better. Speak for your own legs. My legs are looking pretty meaty over here.
Dude, I'm not gonna make any comments. Let me tell you, I don't skip leg day.
Okay.
I don't skip it.
I get it. Yeah.
All right.
Hands, what are those for? Who needs them? I still have 5 fingers. Why should have at least 10 on each hand?
All right. So biggest takeaways, anybody for transportation for the decade? I'm just going to say planes haven't really evolved at all, but I think that we're on the cusp.
We're digressing. We lost a plane.
That's true.
Yeah, that is very true.
That's very true.
We don't know where it went.
I think ultimately we're on the cusp of a massive transportation evolution. I think it's going to happen here in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
All right. Bold prediction.
Moving on next section, talking about consumer technology. This is probably the most relatable topic, I suppose, because it's such a big part of our everyday lives. I'm also going to make a bold statement about this one. I think that the 2010s was the decade of consumer technology. I don't know if you guys agree, but I think
agree.
I think it definitely was. For me, it went from a luxury to it's a necessity.
Yeah. I think 2030, I'll say the same thing though.
It's true. We'll see where the world goes. Big things that happened in consumer technology in the 2010s. First thing, obviously, iPhones were widely adopted. The iPhone 4 came out in 2010, and that was like the first model that pretty much everybody had. You guys, we were talking about it yesterday. All of us had an iPhone 4 at some point.
I think it's hilarious how cell phones have created like separate classes of people.
It kind of has.
We have the iPhone class, and then we have the non-iPhone class, and I'll let you guys make your own interpretation.
We're not going to point any
what
fingers.
those classes mean, but
iPads were launched, smartwatches and Fitbits came out, Alexa and Google Home. Those are some of the big things that were launched during the last decade, and now we just can't imagine operating day to day with those type of items, which I think is nuts. Main timeline and developments. So also a big statement. I think 2010 was probably the biggest year for consumer technology development ever. I really think so.
You got to back that up.
Yeah, that's with the facts.
So again, Apple iPhone 4 came out in 2010.
Okay.
iPad also was released in 2010. So that was a big Apple conference that year in 2010. And iPads have obviously paved the way for tablets and tablet technology, which again,
touchscreen technology. That's like a major part of our everyday lives. Like even at work, when I've had to use iPads a ton at work. Yeah.
I mean, think like growing up, even like right before the iPhone 4, iPhones, like you said, were for like teenagers or adults and stuff. Now, like every kid who's in second grade, it seems like, has like their own personal iPhone.
Or I feel like now, even in elementary schools and stuff,
they use
them in
every
school.
single student has an iPad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's nuts. 4G technology came out in the last decade. Obviously, it started to develop into 5G, but that was probably the mechanism that made it possible for all of us to have such access to the internet at all times.
You know how like spoiled we are? When my phone shows 4G, it ruins my
angry.
day. Yeah, I'm pissed off. Like, wow. Okay.
So from there, obviously, app development as well. Like more applications to utilize the internet, connect with people, and now
everything has an app.
I can't live without it. Instagram was created. I know that's pointing out specific ones, but
is it 2010 still?
Yeah, Instagram came out in 2010.
I don't know who created, but one of the best developments is the Face ID recognition to like log into an app. I used to have a list, and it was like my password for this app or this website is this, and like used to have to log in and everything. Now, like on my iPhone, whatever 10 I have.
Yeah.
Is it 10?
10 or
X, my iPhone 10, you just like hold it up to your face and it's like, oh yeah, it's you. Okay, you're into the app.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And then 2010 was also the year that the first, or I think right before 2010, so like late 2009 was when the first Fitbit model was launched, and I feel like Fitbit paved the way for smartwatch
100%,
technology.
100%.
Can anyone go a full day without paying attention to how many steps they took? I don't think so.
I avoid that. Yeah, I just don't look.
2000.
And I think from there, everything just got better. Those were the staples, those are the main staples. And then their technology has developed. It's all evolved. It's the same type of ideas, but those were the first main types of those technologies that hit the market. AR, VR headsets slowly but surely started to become more commercially accessible. I still personally think that they're a little bit extra. It's not really my cup of tea.
Yeah, I agree.
But at some point, it's going to develop into a major tool. I think probably the same thing was thought about the iPhone and the iPad in the first place. So I think AR, VR headsets in the next 10 years are going to be a big thing. In 2014, Alexa was invented. Say what you want about Alexa, but I personally don't understand the point of it.
Oh, I love Alexa.
I don't use it often. I've got one, but I don't use it often yet.
I use more my Echo, I guess.
Yeah. It's like, what's the difference between that and like me talking to Siri through my Bluetooth speaker?
So I don't even talk to Siri.
I guess I don't talk to Siri. I neglect Siri. I talk to Alexa.
Oh, wow. We got favorites over here, calling people out. And then, so smart homes, smart speakers. And then from there in 2019, finally, at the end of the year, we have technology integrated into every single facet of our everyday life.
Yeah.
Like, I hate to say it, but if I don't know where my phone is for about 1 minute, I start to have a very minor panic attack.
Yeah.
Very minor.
I feel that.
Or when your phone has like 20% battery, you're like, oh my God, I need to find an outlet.
My phone lives at 20% battery.
Ooh, you
My
live on the
phone's
edge.
from
you
my
live on
phone's
the
from
edge.
2015.
That says a lot about you. Do you typically have more than 1/4 of a tank of gas filled up at any point in time, or is it usually less than that?
No, only less than 10 miles
Yeah.
till empty at all times.
Says a lot. Says a lot about you. Other big thing that hit the market was doorbells with cameras on them.
Yeah.
Like Ring. Kind of funny because now people are hacking into those videos. But did you know that?
No.
I did not know that. No.
Yeah. Yeah. People can like hack into your Ring camera. So if you have a Ring, be careful. But I think from now on, looking into the 2020s, it's going to become more and more integrated into everyday life.
Yeah.
Don't
Do you guys remember
for better or for worse?
you guys remember the 2016 Pokemon Go phase?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
That was like the first utilization of augmented reality that like people actually used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it died off pretty fast in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
me too. But it was like you'd be coming home like late at night from the bars and you'd be seeing like people like playing Pokemon Go like in the Country Club Plaza on Kansas City at like 1 a.m. in the morning.
So when I lived on the plaza or the plaza, whatever you guys call it.
Plaza.
Whatever. Me and my roommate at the time would actually like go on walks just to catch Pokemon.
See, so you were one of those people.
At the Nelson Atkins Museum or on the plaza. Yeah, it was crazy because it was like 8 p.m. at night and I'm not kidding, 100 people just all grouped together, like walking, like, and he's like, oh my God, I found this Pokemon. And everyone would run over and it's like
Crazy.
I never got into it. What are your guys' biggest winners of consumer tech in the 2010s?
I'm going to go with the disruption of banking due to consumer tech and apps. Like, people really don't use banks anymore. The way they use banks is totally different. Like now, if you have a check, I never go to the bank and deposit. I take a picture.
So true.
I scan it. Venmo, like how that came out in 2010. I saw like
Lifesaver.
That's a lifesaver.
that's a lifesaver.
Like that's a lifesaver. Like everything is done over your phone in terms. It seems like, at least in like financial ways. Like I think
that's so true.
That changed it. You know, Apple Pay. Like that's not quite.
Apple Pay is big.
That saved my life over in Europe. Like it's
no,
crazy.
It actually did. Yeah,
literally it did. Oh, I lost all my credit cards. Apple Pay was the only way I paid.
Yeah.
So like I'm gonna say that was my biggest disruptor or change that wasn't mentioned.
I think something that wasn't mentioned was 3D printing for me would be the biggest disruptor. Not something like to my personal life, but I just know how much it's being implemented in manufacturing processes, making materials quicker, cheaper, lighter. Specifically for cars, 3D printing parts can really help raise the fuel efficiency of cars and just...
Also, to add on to your food consumption thing, they're starting to 3D print food.
We don't even need a farm.
No. You can 3D print sushi now. You can go get sushi that's 3D printed. Don't look at me like that, Ryan. I don't get it either. I don't get it, but it's happening.
Whoa. What if like that aerosol can was just a 3D printer for meatloaf?
That's how they did it.
They were ahead of their time.
My biggest winner, Apple changing the headphone jack to the lightning port. They totally disrupted the market. I'm just going to say.
I was so pissed when that happened.
They totally disrupted the market.
That's how they get you. They just like make small, minute changes that they say like, you know, improves technology, and it just costs you money or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I still got the headphones.
Okay. What do we think about AirPods? Like, how beneficial are AirPods? Like, you're an AirPod user.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your life is significantly better?
I think I'm significantly cooler.
Okay, all right. That makes it's worth the $200 or $100.
For me, they're not like the only individual Bluetooth speakers, you know, where there isn't some sort of like cord connection to either one, but they were like the first big, widely adopted one, and for me, that's actually made it easier for for me to like move around.
No,
and stuff.
100%. I don't know. I get weird when like things, I feel like on the back of my neck, I used to have the Beats wireless, but they had the strap between the two. And I would hate when it would rub on the back of my neck, or sometimes like I would turn my head and the friction between the wire and the neck would pull it out. Like, dude, you can just like...
Maybe I just need to adopt it.
Yeah, don't hate Ryan. Just jump on the train. Just do it. Okay, biggest fails.
Go ahead, Ryan.
So my biggest fail from 2010, I would say, is remember when iTunes just like forced the U2 album onto our iTunes like phones? Like everyone just woke up one day and like it was this new crappy U2 album, and everyone's like, "What the hell was this?"
I wonder how much money they made off of that. I wonder if that ended up like hurting their album sales. Because it just automatically showed up on everyone.
I boycotted it. I guess I did listen to like one or two songs, I guess.
Yeah.
My biggest fails, I'm going to say any Google product, Google phones, Google glasses.
Oh.
Google Homes are the only one that has been kind of adopted. But Google has tried to roll out all of this consumer technology, and they're like, no, we choose Apple instead.
I will say, kind of on that same note, Google Glass, I mentioned that as like a failed STEM prediction. The way their angle has changed a lot. Like at first they wanted it to be a consumer product. Now, and I think this is really applicable to like us as engineers, they're implementing it in like factories. And so these workers that are in factories are wearing these Google glasses, and like, to view a drawing or a specification or like parts you need is like on the glass. So that way, like you're improving your efficiency because you're not having to go to a desk to look at like a laptop and a drawing or whatever. Like it's all right there. So they're just like picking up pieces and building as they go. Yeah. So
you could do that
they're
on an iPad,
repurposing.
I suppose.
Well, and an iPad, you have to like stop what you're doing and pick up the iPad. I don't know.
I see your point.
I have a different failure. That was a backup because I couldn't remember this. The Galaxy Note 7 blowing up in people's hands, I think, was a pretty fun. and that just further divided the classes of cell phone users. I'm not going to say which one is which, but iPhones don't blow up in people's hands. That's all I got to say.
The other one that I had off of mobile devices is BlackBerry. RIP BlackBerry. I loved those phones back in the day.
I owned a BlackBerry.
Yeah, those were still really big. I think they were like probably the most widely bought phone in 2010, right before Apple rolled out.
They still exist.
The iPhone 4. Yeah, they do.
They're not the same. Yeah,
it's just not the same. I loved a good BlackBerry.
That was a flex when you brought out your BlackBerry.
Those were the first ones that had like the little scroller thing on them too.
Oh, what game? I would play this game where I'd scroll the ball and.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
You'd keep a ball. Oh, Flappy Bird. Sorry. Never mind. Nobody.
Is that a winner or a loser?
It's a winner. It was okay.
All right. So next section.
So the last one that we're going to touch on is like the medical / health space and kind of how it's developed. So just a couple quick facts before I get into like some of the timelines and big events that happen. Is in 2010, like the average cost per capita. So the amount of dollars that were spent per person in 2010 was around $8,300 per person. 2018 is around $11,000 per person. So I mean,
for
that's
medical costs?
For medical costs, or like medical.
Well, inflation over 10 years.
Inflation, but so that's about in GDP, which gross domestic product is kind of like the value of what you produce. It's about 18% of America's GDP is spent on healthcare services, which is insane. It's about $3.65 trillion a year in today's 2020 terms. And to that point also, so they track like growth of GDP over time.
Yeah.
Medical has always outpaced the average GDP growth. A lot of resources are being spent on medical that you don't probably think about and you don't really realize, but like it is, that's why it's such a big deal.
I see. Some people may hear that number and be like, wow, like we're spending more. That means we're getting sicker. But like, I'm a half full type guy, just who I am. But I mean, that's because we have new ways of detecting.
Right.
People have better treatments, new treatments. So these treatments that didn't exist, we're now paying for. So like the quality of life has gone up.
Quality of life has improved. And then also life expectancy. Like that probably has something to do with it. You know what I mean?
It's not just like, oh, we're getting sicker or they're taking our money more. It's more expensive. It's like, no, they're like, new developments, new technologies that.
I mean, it's definitely a multitude of factors. I mean, also too, one of the things they talk about is like how much of a bigger play like heart risk has become because we ate unhealthy, but then also like to the Fitbit, the exercise culture is like growing a lot more than it did pre-2010, so people are spending more.
Exercise culture has grown exponentially within the past, like, I'm going to say 5 years.
Yeah.
Honestly.
So that kind of just sets the stage on like where we were, where we are now, and also too just how big medical is. You know, we haven't really had an episode on it, but it is worth pointing out in this decade in review. I'm just going to touch on big things that happened. I didn't know that prior to 2010, all of your medical records were still stored on paper,
on hard copy.
On hard copy.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. In 2010, they moved to EHRs, which is like electronic health records, as you would think. But now that's where you can share across like hospitals and request stuff. But prior to that, it was like you had to go get a copy or they had to fax it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like 2010, the iPhone 4 came out, yet we were still storing hard medical copies.
So I was gonna originally say, like, just in general, like medical records and just like doing things online when it comes to my like hospital or doctors and stuff.
I can do pretty much. It's so much easier.
Okay, it's so much. It's still hard, and it's still like super confusing, and I don't understand it a lot of times. And I'm like, it should be so much more efficient. But now that I know it just as recently,
yeah, and I think a lot of that's like privacy, like the whole HIPAA, like I don't know, it's a lot more privacy. The Ebola outbreak in 2014, a lot of people kind of remember that in West Africa, how big a deal that was. 11,000 people died from that. And then here, kind of more closer to home, but the Zika virus in 2015 and
There's
2017.
a couple in Texas, right?
So I was surprised how many cases there were in America. America, they said, had over 40,000 cases.
Which one was from mosquitoes?
Zika, yeah.
Zika.
Okay,
yeah.
that's okay.
And that was the one that like if a female had the Zika virus,
she transferred it,
or if she got pregnant, like the baby was born with deficiencies or like abnormalities and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so that started like in Brazil, but kind of spread through North and South America. And like that was such a big thing. Like people couldn't travel to certain parts of the country or whatever.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was scary.
That was a big one. And then I guess there was like a measles kind of outbreak
kids,
recently.
Right?
Yeah. 2018 or something like that.
No, that was recent. Like
last year. Like
so
2018
like
and
2018.
And I think it's still I think there's still some going on in 2019.
Yeah.
So kind of those are the depressing things, but hey, we're overcoming them.
Let's talk about positive developments.
I mean, Ebola and Zika 100 years ago probably could have wiped out a continent.
That's quite true.
Like, let's be honest.
That is
Not
very
wrong.
true. Like, think how like what the Black Plague would have looked like. Like, would that have just been a blip on the map type of thing? Yet it like wiped out.
That's something to
how much
ponder.
Easily, just because half the reason the plague was spread is because of sanitary issues.
Yeah. So those were kind of the challenges we faced. Some of the big advancements, I guess I'll say. So melanoma, the skin cancer, was like a big deal, and it was the number one like skin cancer, and it was very mortal. But the drug got approved, and like since then, the rate of death from melanoma has gone down dramatically. So like that has seen real big impact.
I didn't know that they made a drug for that.
Yeah,
I didn't know melanoma was dangerous. I've been talking smack to it this whole time.
No. You better watch out.
All right.
Another one, and this is more recent, but in 2019, breast cancer, they came out with a new type of blood testing, and this is real positive, or recent, but it can spot breast cancer, like if you're susceptible to it 5 years before you actually contract it, or before you, I guess, get breast cancer. And I didn't realize how like breast cancer, I mean, obviously it's very public and people talk about it, but like how the amount of cases it has in women. Like it's the number one case of cancer in women
by a long shot.
I'm pretty sure it's like the most.
So it wasn't, lung cancer was still the most.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. And then 2016, immunotherapy. So I don't know if you guys know, but it's like changing the way that you combat cancer. So in the past, and even still standard practice, I would say, is chemotherapy or radiation. But like the way that works is it targets the cells and kind of attack, or it targets the cancer itself, where immunotherapy is essentially building up your immune system. So in the long term, it has better effectiveness versus cancer, but also it's better for like the human to go through as far as treatment goes.
Yeah, instead of destroying yourself.
So that was 2016, and I actually know people who are starting to use immunotherapy, and I mean, they say like you have to go through a certain protocol, you have to be of certain health to do it, but like that development, that could have big impact on cancer. 2015, and this goes back to kind of consumer tech, but 3D printing of organs. So they haven't they've been able to 3D print organs, but like it's not really widely adopted. But the idea is like for transplants, how big of a thing it is, to have a kidney transplant or something like that. Everyone's like, oh, I need a kidney or I need a whatever heart. And that's all urgent stuff. It's not, some of it you can plan out a couple months in advance, but like being able to 3D print a heart, for example.
I can't even comprehend that.
Yeah, it would be crazy.
I can't even comprehend it. Well, they're doing like 3D printed skin grafts and stuff now. I think that might be like the most widely adopted application of 3D printing organs so far, because that's like not life-threatening. It's easier to do, and it's not as complex as making a liver.
Yeah.
So
another one that blew my mind is trans fats. So in 2013, the FDA...
Which ones are the bad ones?
Trans.
So, so in 2013, the FDA said that trans fats essentially is bad because it raises your level of bad cholesterol. But I didn't know that they put a ban on it. So like food can be produced with any trans fats. And the ban went into effect January 1st of 2020. So with the timing of this episode, if you're buying something off the shelf, it shouldn't have any trans fats in it.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy? I
didn't know that either, because I still read every single like food label looking for the trans fats and be like, nope, I'm not getting any of those.
I knew it was bad. I thought it was like, oh, it's like saturated fat, trans fat. Try to stay away from it, but like it's supposed to be not produced, at least.
It's because it's fabricated fats. It's made from hydrogenated substances. It's a processed form of fat. So like that's going to be, not only does it raise your cholesterol, but I think it makes you more likely to have other diseases and health issues as well.
And then I'm going to kind of jump into, I got two more topics to cover. Prosthetics. One of those, which I think is really cool. So prosthetics and development of that has happened prior to 2010, but the big development within the decade of 2010 to 2020 or 2019 was the idea that you can transmit brain signals, and we kind of touched on this on past episode with Neuralink, but brain signals to a prosthetic to use, a prosthetic arm, but then also vice versa. I didn't realize a lot of the problem with prosthetics is like common day type of prosthetics, like you can tell your arm to make a fist, for example. But a lot of that, when you're grabbing a plastic cup, you don't know how much to squeeze type of thing.
So like your body communicating back to your brain.
And so now one of the things is that they're having prosthetics communicate back to your brain, so then you can feel touch and stuff. So it's a lot less bulky,
wild.
And it's a lot better use of the prosthetic rather than just having a one-way signal. It's like a two-way signal.
Yeah.
So they're
never thought about that.
Yeah. So they're using that, or they're trying to develop that in like prosthetic hands, prosthetic legs, that's been a really big push. And also another kind of prosthetic is like eyes. So I saw this was crazy, is like restoring vision to people who are like essentially blind. Is they have these glasses, and they're also developing the prosthetic eye itself, but like short term they have these glasses, and like it takes pictures or takes video, transmits it into like wavelengths or something like that to your retina, and it like helps people who have very diminished eyesight see better, essentially. So like, let's say you're registered as being blind. You wear these glasses, and through transmitting this video to wavelengths and stuff like that, like you may be able to actually make out parts of the world around you. Which would be crazy.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So prosthetics, I think that's going to be a big takeoff in the future. And then the one that I saved for last, and probably because it's a little more of a hot topic, is the modification of human genes. And so in 2013, there was this process or whatever called CRISPR. It's CRISPR, and it stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. And what that means for all of us is they essentially are able to take a look at your genome, your DNA, and let's say, for example, you have a hereditary thing that's been passed down, and you're going to be exposed to some health problem down the road. They're able to take a look at your DNA strands and modify your DNA strands so that essentially getting rid of that hereditary problem. So, whether that's onset for Alzheimer's, you're, have a high risk of
heart disease,
arthritis or heart disease or whatever it may be. That's the genetic.
Or is it diabetes? Is that what I'm thinking?
Diabetes. Yeah. I mean, all these different things. It's crazy. They literally go down to that molecular of a level. But with that brings into point all about human modification and
designer babies.
Right. And so I didn't even know this, but back in China in 2019, this doctor modified embryos, 3 embryos of babies before they were born to try to make them less susceptible to HIV. And he ended up going to jail because it's unethical and it wasn't approved by the worldwide kind of medical board and stuff like that. But it brings about the whole point of genetically modifying the human species.
I think that's something that's going to be talked about a ton over the next 10 years for sure, because the technology is starting to become so much more accessible. People want to keep having kids. People are going to want to do whatever they can as a future parent to protect their child from anything or make them, equipped to have the best life. I think that's going to be a conversation that's going to become more and more of a hot topic, whether or not that's ethical.
Or changing your kid, like, the physical appearance of your kid or whatever. It's like putting God in your own hands type of thing, putting a higher power in your own hands.
Yeah.
So I didn't realize, like, I knew that genetic modification was something that's like being developed and highly controversial, but I didn't know that a case has already happened in China and like it blew up on the medical worldwide stage. And he went to jail and is in jail. It was him and 2 other doctors. Because obviously, like, they want to get their hands around the ethical side of it before they let people start doing it. So with all those kind of being said, I'm going to hit on my biggest winner of the decade in health. I'm going to say that it is the fight on cancer. And I know that's kind of low-hanging fruit, but the mortality rate of cancer has gone down pretty much every single year. It's small steps. It's down like 1% or something, a couple percent since 2010, but like 1% of how many cases that is.
Right.
So that's mine. Becca?
I have a couple of winners here. First, we didn't talk about this before, but the at-home DNA testing kits. I personally haven't used one before, but that's become like a massive movement. Like people are just giving that to each other for Christmas, and then you can figure out what your heritage is. I know that there's a little bit of speculation on the accuracy of it, but I would say that's probably like one of the biggest, most widely adopted trends within the medical field that's happened. And then the other one I'm going to say is a recent development, but potential HIV cure vaccination. That's a big deal. There have been 2 cases so far where they've used this solution that they have and it's gotten rid of
right
their
because
HIV.
So far to date you just like take medicine and it's supposed to limit the effects of being exposed to that disease, but like you said, like they reversed it. Also too, funny point about that DNA testing, I didn't know that they can, and I've heard personal stories about people doing this and they come back that they're like 0.1 Neanderthal or something like that. like what if you took the test and you're like, oh
what does it mean? Like you just haven't evolved. Like your family lineage hasn't evolved as much as everyone else's.
It's an IQ test.
Oh, I'm dead. Kevin,
hilarious.
What about you?
I got 2. Neuralink. I mean, it's easy, but I just got really, really hyped up about the idea of being able to electrically influence synapses in your brain. Your physical health you can easily maintain. I think I'm mostly scared about my mental health, especially like concussions and stuff that I've received throughout my lifetime, and anyone that's, gotten a concussion. Or if you've got family with Alzheimer's or dementia, which runs in my family, I think, just the prospect of being able to help with memory loss and just being able to function at an older level. I don't care so much about the extension of life, just the extension of the quality of your life.
I dig that.
That's a big topic for me. And also paralysis, being able to help people move without the use, people who can't walk for whatever reason, they now hopefully